take a look at a little bit more about matter. We're going to look at physical and chemical properties of matter. Physical properties of matter are things that you can observe or measure without changing what that matter is. So you can look at what color it is, what temperature it is, what density is, what its melting point is, what its boiling point is, without actually changing what it is. So you can think about it as like if you freeze water, it's still water. It's just looks different and feels a little bit different. A chemical property is how matter could change into new substances. So something that could rust, something that reacts with water, something that's flammable, something that's inflammable. These are all chemical properties, and we'll look a little more examples of each of these in just a moment. Physical and chemical changes are essentially changes of those physical or chemical properties. A physical change, the chemical is the same throughout, but it has changed in some way. So you could cut something into pieces, you could boil it, you could melt it, you could freeze it, you can do all sorts of different things to change it physically. But chemically, that thing is the same throughout. In a chemical change, you actually change that chemical to some other chemical. So the elements rearrange in different ways. You could have a lot of different things happening in a chemical change. We'll look a lot more extensively at both of these in lab. States of matter is a physical property. So the state the matter is in could be solid, liquid, or gas. These are properties of that matter. This simulation shows on a micro scale what's happening in these different phases of matter, or states of matter. In this case, we're looking at solids. Notice that the particles are very close together. They're still moving a little bit, but they're pretty much in the same spots. They're kind of wiggling in place. If we look at a liquid, notice that it has flowed to fill a container. Think about what it looks like when you work with a liquid, like liquid water. And there's a lot more motion going on. If we look at a gas, it has moved around so that all the particles are bouncing across the walls. There's a lot of space between the molecules. They've filled this entire container. Changes in state can be between these three different states. We can go from solid to liquid or liquid to solid, liquid to gas, gas to liquid, gas solid, solid gas. And if we're going from a solid to a liquid, that's a melting process. The reverse is freezing. I've got a nice diagram to show you that shows these relationships. So when we go from a solid to a gas, we call that process sublimation. When we go from a gas to a solid, that's deposition. Liquid to solid is freezing, solid to liquid is melting. Liquid to gas is boiling or evaporation. The reverse is condensation. If we think about, I'd like you to take a moment and think about what the state or state change each of these is. Think about what the state is of this. This is a liquid. This is liquid mercury. This shows you it's pourable. You can see that it flows along the surface, and it's not going up into the air, so it's not a gas, so that you can tell that it's a liquid. In this case, we have dry ice that's sublimating to form gaseous carbon dioxide. Throughout, you want to be careful to be able to distinguish between a change and a property. A property is something that could occur. It's something that you can observe in the moment. A change is something's actually changed, something has occurred. So water can boil at 100 degrees Celsius. That's a physical property of water. If that water actually boils, then that is a physical change. So some examples of physical and chemical properties. Like I said, physical property, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, dry is solid, unknown black is red and floats in water. So these are all things you can observe without changing that item. The density of something. Chemical properties are things that could happen. So it could sodium could react explosively with water. You can burn paper, so it's flammable. Metal can rust. Distinguish this with changes. A physical change, water actually boiling, dry ice subliming, mixing red and blue dyes to make purple. You still have the red and the blue dye in there. They've just combined, and our eye can only distinguish the purple. A chemical change, on the other hand, you actually have something happening with the elements that are in there. So like water being split into hydrogen and oxygen, or if you combine two solutions and liquids and you make a solid out of them.